Hello, welcome to Maltbox, the non-chill filtered whisky blog. I'm Andy and this is whisky review number 49. What we have today is the fourth instalment should I say, of the Gordon & Macphail Speyside collection mini-series that I'm doing. We've basically tried a couple of whiskies so far from the 70s, the 60s and one from the 50s. And I've got another one from the 50s here. And that comes in the form of this very fetching 1953 Strathisla single malt Scotch whisky. Now, Strathisla is a Speyside distillery, hence the Speyside collection. It's currently owned by Pernod Ricard / Chivas Regal, depending on how you want to look at it, really. The distillery is located in Keith. It's relatively sort of average in size, around 2.5 million litres a year in capacity. The majority of the whisky from Strathisla goes into Chivas Regal blended whiskies. There are single malts available, apart from the independent bottlings. You know, their sort of core single malt is an official bottling as a 12-year-old, but it's not actually in the top 30, I don't think, or top 40 of sort of official bottle sales. As a brand, at least, it's not really up there. The 12-year-old will set you back by about 35 to 40 quid. So you know, it's up against things like Glendronach 12-year-old. Your typical sort of everyday is like your Glenfiddichs. I was going to say the Glenlivet 12, but the new version, well, the replacement, the Founder's Reserve, isn't even worth talking about, but we'll get onto that one day. Back to this. So, lovely colour on this whisky. As with the majority of the other whiskies we've tried so far from the Speyside collection, this has been matured exclusively in sherry. In this instance, it is a first to fill sherry butt. The cask number, in case you wanted to know, was 1614. This was distilled on the 19th of December 1953, coming up to Christmas. I'm sure they're all having a bit of a snifter in the in the still house, and bottled on the 20th of November 2012, and that makes this whisky 58 years old. 58 years old, gorgeous colour to it, really nice colour. This is the sort of colour that the Dalmores and the like actually try and aspire to by pumping it full of E150 caramel colouring, but it doesn't really get the same effect. Lovely, lovely colour. 258 bottles worldwide, so really not many at all. Retails for £1,950 at the moment, so call it £2 grand. It's not exactly pocket money. Once again, yes, they are expensive. But you know, they are targeted at certain collectors and people that have that sort of money to throw around on whiskey. I am a drinker of whiskey, not a collector, so unfortunately I don't really have the kind of change to slam down on a bottle like this. Before we go any further, once again, thank you very much to the guys at Gordon Macphail for providing these samples. However, being provided with these samples does not indicate that I'm going to give these a positive review. Thank you. Moving on. Really nice legs on the glass. It's like toffee in a glass, this. Really thick and gloopy. In terms of colour, Jaffa cake moments. Everyone loves a Jaffa cake. Everyone. Show me someone that doesn't. Let's move on to the nose. Only joking. A little bit. Nutty, sweet caramel, thick, chewy toffee. But what was tingling my nose quite a lot was a really, really strong menthol note. Really strong. I think a little bit of time in the glass is required, let's put it that way. Really sweet, really very sweet. a hell of a lot of that sherry influence in there. There is that very stereotypical Speyside Christmas cake sort of flavours in there. Think currants, think brandy raisins, think peels, think, well, Christmas cake, shockingly enough. A little bit of chocolate as well. Only a little. Ah, right, that menthol's kind of tailing off now, thankfully. Still a little bit prickly. And those nuts are still there as well. Sort of like a walnut kind of smell in there. This is another one of those drams. And it's a bit of a recurring theme, this, but it seems to be very engaging. I'm going to put a bit of water in it later on. And it will only be a drop. I can assure you it is only a drop. It looks like a lot on the video, but these spoons are very small and I can't get anything in them. For example, that looks like half a teaspoon, but that's it, just a drop. Smallest teaspoons in the world. I just realised that was in front of it, so you probably couldn't see that. Stewed fruits, and I hate that phrase, but it is stewed fruit, sort of like jam, apricot jam. There's sort of like a creaminess in there as well, and I'm not going to say vanilla cream like ice cream or creme brulee. It's just really very sort of like thick and velvety, and it's like making a sauce with double cream. As soon as that double cream goes in the pan and mixes with everything else, you just get this really sort of like rich sort of like smell in there. There are some sort of herbs and similar flavours, so I think cinnamon, and there's actually some clove in there as well as a touch of star anise possibly. It has been, I mean, I've got another two to go after this, but it has been a very humbling experience to be able to try these whiskies, particularly at this age. It's just absolutely immense. But again, just to stipulate, being sent these drams does not mean that I'm giving them favourable scores. If there's something wrong with them, I'll tell you if there's something wrong with them. So we've got another one of these info sheets here. I'm not going to read the tasting notes, I've not read them, because once again, please try and stay away from tasting notes that you see on bottles and tubes and things. 9 times out of 10 they're a load of bullshit. Well, saying that, well, I'm probably telling you might sound daft as well. So, key moments in history in 1953. Queen Elizabeth II is crowned at her coronation on the 2nd of June. God bless her. Watson and Crick discover the double helix structure of DNA. Pretty impressive. Edmund Hillary and Nepalese Tenzing Norgay are the first people to reach the summit of Mount Everest. You know, I feel awful when I read stuff like that. So when you see all these footballers that are like 19, I'm nearly 30, and I just think, what have I done with my life? Ian Fleming publishes his first James Bond novel, Casino Royale. Joseph Stalin dies. Or Comrade Stalin, if you're that way inclined. That took a bit of a turn towards the end of that list, didn't it? They were all pretty upbeat things. You know, discovery of DNA and getting to the top of Everest, the Queen getting coronated, and Joseph Stalin died as well. Excellent. Right, back onto this. I'm just going to give it one more go on the nose. That's interesting. In the sort of 30 seconds or so that I was jabbering on, there's a little bit of sulphur coming out now. And I think I mentioned this in one of the previous reviews. I'm quite susceptible to picking that up, and it tends to ruin it for me. But again, it is sort of contributing to it. It's not unpleasant. It's not overpowering. There's a little bit of strawberry in there, which is a bit unusual, because you don't find that very often in whiskey. And some blackberry type thing, like blackcurrant maybe, like blackcurrant jam, or blackcurrant conserve if you're one of those households that shop at Waitrose. On the palate now. Mouthfeel wasn't as thick as I thought. Very thin, actually. Disappointing. Lots of chocolate, a little bit of tobacco now coming in towards the finish. I say a little bit, it's actually getting stronger. Strawberries are there again. A little touch, a little tiny touch of sort of like exotic fruit. I'm not too sure which, but it's a bit like drinking Capri Sun or Lilt. A little bit of Lilt in there. 58-year-old whiskey and I'm comparing it to Lilt. Oh god, right. The finish is becoming a bit bitter. That tobacco's still there. What I will say, it's kind of woody. You know, I don't taste wood. I don't lick wood. But you know, if like you were at school and you were chewing your pencil or something like that, it's got a little bit of that to it. Raisins, again with the Christmas cake flavours. I don't think I've mentioned this yet, so I do apologise. I've covered pretty much everything else, but it's 43% it's bottled at. I believe, don't hold me to it, but I believe it is chill filtered, but it is natural colour. So 1 out of 2 isn't bad. And it has got woodier on the nose actually over time. Sort of like sawdust sort of smell to it. Tiny little bit of that menthol from the nose that I mentioned. Going into the finish now, quite hot. 58 years in the cask has still left this with a few little flaws. I think it's not quite as well rounded as you might expect. Not like the malt, like I credit where credit's due, it's very rounded. This has still got a little bit of character to it in the sense it's still kind of like spiky here and there. Barbecue flavours. Barbecue ribs. Meaty. Interesting. Apple pie. Digestive biscuits. That meat flavours, quite interesting. I would not have expected that. And now on the finish, as well as that tobacco, very, very sweet. And I'm talking like icing and sugar sweet. Maybe a little bit of honey. Maybe a tiny little bit of nuttiness as well. I mentioned the walnuts. I think they've come back a little bit towards the finish. Now I'm not topping this up a lot. I'm only putting a little bit more in because if I'm going to be putting water in it, don't want it to go down too far, you know, and I'm a strong advocate of responsible drinking. So, as I say, it's just a drop, nothing more, won't need any more. That's it. Let's get that around there, see what that does. Strathisla, it's quite interesting for a couple of reasons. It's had a bit of a, like a lot of distilleries I suppose you could say, it's had a bit of a dodgy past to it. A gentleman bought it in 1940 because it's been named and renamed a few times. It was like originally when it was open it was called Milton or Milltown and then Milton, and then it was changed to Strathisla in like 1880, and then in 1940 a chap bought it and he renamed it to the older name. He then got arrested and put in prison a couple of years later for dodgy dealing. And then Chivas, I think it was then purchased in like 1950 by Chivas Regal at the time, and they spent about 71 grand at it to purchase the distillery at a compulsory purchase auction. So they spent 71 grand back in 1950. So they've not had the distillery for long before they started distilling this. So it's only 3 years later. And then I think in like the early 2000s, like 2000, 2002, maybe 2001, Pernod Ricard bought the distillery from Chivas, and obviously bought Chivas, the brand as well. So the majority of Strathisla malt does go into the Chivas blends. The whiskey is actually pumped off site into nearby Glenkeith distillery. which is also owned by Pernod Ricard, and that is basically just pumped through in a tube to Glenkeith, because there's no bottling facilities at Strathisla, and whilst there are warehouses, I think only about 20,000 casks maybe a year or something like that actually stay in the warehouses. Quite small, not a lot in terms of like comparison to some of the other distilleries. So it's quite interesting. It has to go over to another distillery where it's then bottled or tankered and sent away. So that has had a bit of time to open up. Yes, I am one that swirls my whiskey because I don't think it makes a jot of difference how you do it. That water's really brought out that cinnamon note from earlier. It's taken away some of the kind of like Christmas cakey elements to it actually. It's lightened it a little bit. Made it a little bit plucky. So cinnamon, Chinese spice. Still quite nutty, and there is still chocolate and coffee on there as well like I got originally. The menthol has turned into sort of a soft spearmint now as well. It's not gone. It's just turned into something else, sort of like spearmint chewing gum. I think this drum will like a little bit of water, to be honest with you. It certainly seems a bit more at home with itself. A little bit of dry cranberry in there as well. So let's try it on the palate. It's become a lot fruitier, a little bit vanilla. Earlier I said there's no creme brulee, there is now. Raspberry jam. There's more Christmas cake notes on the palate than there is on the nose with water actually. Back to the sort of like red currants and raisins. A little bit dried banana as well, you know, like the little banana crisps you can get. Finish. Sweet. It's a lot sweeter than it was. There's not that sort of tobacco flavour, it is mainly sort of like chocolate and the icing sugar from before. There's something on that nose that I can't put my finger on. I think it is that spearmint though. I'm sure it is. Interesting, very interesting. Still a little bit of charred meat profile to it. Still a lot of sweetness. Stewed fruit, honey. Nutella on toast. And the finish is sweet, yes, I've mentioned before it's sweet. It's getting a little bit warm, a little bit bitter towards the end. And again a little bit prickly. Interesting, very interesting. I don't think it's quite as good as the Malt. I think it does have its flaws. I think, considering it's been in the cask for 58 years, it's still got a little bit of up and down about it. Temperamental, I'd probably say. I think water helps a little bit. Overall, characterful, but its character's predominantly sweet. Quite heavy, rich flavour. Sorry about that, a few technical problems. So yeah, it's quite a rich whiskey, however with a few drops of water, or a drop of water in this instance, it opens up a little bit, becomes a little bit softer, gets a little bit fruitier, which I think helps it actually quite a lot. I do prefer it with that drop of water in it, to be honest with you. It's a piece of liquid history, it's very impressive, and it's been a privilege to try it again. In terms of score, I'm going to give this whiskey an 87 out of 100. So still a very good score, 87. It's up there. It is up there. I think for me, it's it just missed a few things for me, to be honest with you, to sort of tip it up towards that 90. Still a great whisky. Sorry, Comrade Starling, that you were on this review and in this fact sheet. But once again, thanks for watching. See you soon.